The last transmission. Dr. Emily Anderson's fingers hovered over the quantum interface as she drew in a deep breath. After 15 years as humanity's voice in the Galactic Council, she would send their final message. The crystalline spires of the council chamber loomed above her, their usual warm glow seeming somehow colder today. Are we certain about this course of action? Ambassador Ravak's secondary breathing bladders quivered, a sign of extreme distress in scary physiology. His iridescent scales reflected the soft blue light of Earth's last active quantum relay beacon. Your species has always been vocal about your intentions. Emily allowed herself a small smile. That's precisely the point, Ambassador. Humanity has always broadcast our intentions, our dreams, our fears. We've filled the galaxy with our noise since first contact. What happens when the loudest voice in the room suddenly goes silent? She initiated the Protocol Omega sequence. Across the chamber, alien representatives clustered around their consoles as the first systems began going dark. The quantum networks that had carried human entertainment, art, and commerce across the stars winked out one by one. By the first light, they're actually doing it, whispered Delegate Anxith of the Silicon Concordat, their crystalline form vibrating in disbelief. The humans are severing all connections. Ravak's assistant, a young Skiteri named Quakes, burst into the chamber. Ambassador, the Earth defense grid. It's gone. Not destroyed, just gone. And the lunar colonies, the Mars settlements. All of them, dark. Emily stood, smoothing her diplomatic uniform. The weight of the next few moments pressed against her chest. 15 years of preparation had led to this. She remembered the day the Council had dismissed humanity's warnings about the quantum anomalies at the galaxy's edge. They'd called it typical human paranoia. Dr. Anderson, Ravak's voice carried a note of pleading now. Whatever your species has discovered, whatever you're planning, surely we can discuss this. The quantum interface pulsed once, accepting the final command sequence. Emily thought of her daughter back on Earth, already prepared for what would come next. The next phase of human evolution wasn't just about technology or consciousness. It was about understanding when to stop explaining and start acting. That's just it, Ambassador, Emily said, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent chamber. We're done talking. The message transmitted instantly across all remaining frequencies, in all known languages. We're done talking. Simple, direct, terrifying in its finality. Across the galaxy, human ships vanished from their berths. Space stations emptied of human personnel in perfectly choreographed evacuations. Colonial outposts fell silent, their automated systems continuing to function with unsettling precision. In the council chamber, Emily watched the chaos unfold with serene detachment. Delegates from 100 species scrambled to understand, to contain, to explain what was happening. But humanity had learned from its centuries of galactic citizenship. They'd learned that sometimes the greatest power lies not in what you say, but in what you leave unsaid. The Defense Committee will need to convene immediately, Ravak was saying, his scales now a pale shade of anxiety. We need to establish containment protocols. Containment. Emily laughed softly. Ambassador, look around you. Everything humans have built, every system we've designed, every piece of technology we've shared, it's all part of what happens next. We're not withdrawing from the galaxy. We're about to show you why silence can be more powerful than words. With that, Emily Anderson, the last human most of them would see for quite some time, simply vanished from the council chamber. She left behind a single data crystal, its surface inscribed with words that would haunt the Galactic Council for years to come. You thought we were noisy because we were primitive. The truth is, we were noisy because we were searching. Now we've found what we were looking for. The real question is, when the silence falls, will you be brave enough to listen to what it's telling you? The crystal pulsed once with an inner light, then went dark, the first note in humanity's symphony of silence. The Ghost Fleet. Commander James Mitchell stood frozen on the bridge of the Galactic defense vessel Stoneheart, watching as thousands of human ships performed an impossible dance across his tactical display. Each vessel moved with perfect precision, their formation shifting like schools of fish, before vanishing into nothing. "Lieutenant Cooper, what the hell is happening to our tracking systems?" He turned to face his human executive officer, only to find her smiling. That same serene smile he'd seen on every human face for the past week. "Everything is working perfectly, Commander," Sarah Cooper said, her hand resting lightly on her console. "The systems aren't failing. They're evolving." Her form began to shimmer slightly at the edges, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. "Sarah, wait." Mitchell reached for her, but his hand passed through empty air. Where Lieutenant Cooper had stood seconds before, a small holographic message hovered. "Thank you for everything, Commander. Look for us in the silence." The massive display screen at the front of the bridge lit up with emergency notifications. Mitchell watched in horror as human vessels across every sector of monitored space executed synchronized jump protocols. Merchant ships, diplomatic vessels, private yachts, military cruisers, all moving as one. "Sir," his Centaurian sensor officer's tendrils writhed in agitation. "The human ships, they're not using any known jump points. They're creating their own spatial ruptures." Mitchell's mandibles clicked in frustration. For 3 years, he'd commanded the most advanced joint species defense force in the galaxy, and now he was watching it unravel in real time. The humans had comprised only 15% of his crew, but they'd been everywhere. Engineering, tactical, medical. All gone now, leaving only those same cryptic smiles and mysterious messages. "Replay the last 6 months of evacuation drills," he ordered, his military training kicking in. "Focus on human crew movements." The footage confirmed his growing suspicion. Every drill, every routine exercise had been a rehearsal for this moment. The humans hadn't just been practicing. They'd been programming the very fabric of space-time, teaching it to remember their movements. "Commander," his communication officer interrupted, "we're receiving reports from across the galaxy. The human exodus. It's perfectly synchronized. Every ship, every station, every colony. They're not just leaving. They're following a pattern we can't see." Mitchell studied the tactical display, his years of military experience trying to make sense of the movements. The human ships weren't fleeing. They were weaving something. Each jump, each vanishing act was like a thread in an enormous tapestry. A message flashed across his personal console, encrypted with his own command codes. The sender, Captain Rebecca Lawrence, his former tactical officer who had transferred out 6 months ago. He opened it with trembling claws. "Dear James, by the time you see this, the pattern will be nearly complete. Those evacuation drills you helped us perfect. They weren't just drills. Every movement, every coordinate plotted, every course charted. They were all notes in a symphony that's about to begin. Remember when you asked me why humans were so obsessed with pushing the boundaries of jump space? We weren't pushing boundaries. We were erasing them. The silence that's coming isn't an end. It's a beginning. Watch the spaces between the stars. That's where you'll find us. Becca." Mitchell slumped in his command chair, watching as the last human ships prepared for their final jump. Years of joint operations, shared missions, celebratory drinks in the officers' lounge. Had it all been preparation for this moment? The tactical display flickered one last time as the remaining human vessels moved into position. For a brief moment, Mitchell saw it, the pattern hidden in their movements. It wasn't a retreat. It wasn't an evacuation. It was a transformation. The ships vanished simultaneously, leaving behind a ghostly echo in the fabric of space-time. In the sudden silence, Mitchell remembered something Lieutenant Cooper had told him during her last evaluation. "The thing about humans, sir, is that we've always known the most important messages don't need words. As the Stoneheart sensors recorded the final traces of the human fleet's passage, Mitchell realized that the galaxy's noisiest species had just delivered their most powerful message, without saying a word at all. Digital breadcrumbs. Special Agent Michael Hayes hunched over his quantum terminal in the dimly lit analysis chamber of the Galactic Intelligence Division. His eyes burned from staring at streams of data for 20 straight hours, but he couldn't stop now. The patterns were there, hidden in plain sight. "You're going to fry your neural implants if you keep this up," his Meridian partner, Agent Vex, hummed. Their bioluminescent tentacles cast shifting shadows across the holographic displays surrounding them. "Look at this," Michael pointed to a series of seemingly random system activations across the galaxy. Every piece of human-made technology is executing predetermined commands. But they're not shutting down. They're transforming. He pulled up footage from a human-designed atmospheric processor on Delta Centauri. The massive machine had spontaneously reorganized its molecular structure, becoming something that defied conventional physics. Similar reports flooded in from across known space. "The quantum signatures are unlike anything we've seen," Vex noted, their tentacles weaving through the holographic data. "It's as if the technology is evolving itself." Michael nodded, pulling up old mission logs. "Remember that colonial terraforming project on Proxima B 3 years ago? Everyone questioned why humans insisted on using their own proprietary systems instead of proven galactic standard technology. They were installing quantum nodes," Vex realized, their bioluminescence pulsing with excitement. But for what purpose? Before Michael could respond, his terminal chimed. A message appeared, encoded with his old mentor's signature. Director Thomas Walker had retired 6 months ago, just before the human withdrawal began. Michael's hands shook as he opened the file. "Mike, if you're reading this, you've already started seeing the patterns. Good, that's what we trained you for. But you're still thinking like an investigator, looking for a conspiracy. What you're seeing isn't a plot. It's an invitation. Every patent we filed, every technology we shared, every system we built, they're all pieces of a puzzle. Humanity didn't create them to control or dominate. We created them to prepare the galaxy for what comes next. Remember what I taught you about investigation? The most important clues are the ones hiding in broad daylight. We've been broadcasting our intentions since first contact. The galaxy just wasn't ready to understand them yet. Look deeper into the quantum signatures. They're not random mutations. They're evolutionary guidelines. Each system is teaching itself, and everything around it, how to transcend its original purpose. Tom. P.S. Even this investigation was part of the plan. We needed someone who could help others understand what's coming. Michael sat back, his mind racing. 6 years in galactic intelligence, and he'd never seen anything like this. The humans hadn't just planned their departure. They'd orchestrated a galaxy-wide metamorphosis. Vex, he called to his partner, cross-referenced these quantum signatures with the original patents. "I think I know what we're looking at." The holographic displays filled with technical documents spanning decades of human innovation. Each invention, each technological breakthrough had been designed to interconnect, to evolve, to transform. "By the cosmic currents," Vex whispered, their tentacles coiling in astonishment. The humans weren't building an infrastructure. They were planting seeds. Michael smiled, remembering his last conversation with Director Walker. The old man had quoted Arthur C. Clarke. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Now he understood. Humanity's technology wasn't meant to be understood. It was meant to evolve beyond understanding. "They're not coming back, are they?" Vex asked softly. "No," Michael replied, watching as another human system across the galaxy transformed itself. "They're not coming back because they never left. They just changed into something we can't see yet." He gestured at the shifting data streams. "But they left us a map to follow." As if in response, the quantum signatures pulsed in unison across the galaxy, a digital heartbeat echoing through the silence humanity had left behind. In that moment, Michael realized that every investigation, every analysis. Every pattern he'd been trained to recognize had prepared him for this. Understanding humanity's final and most important message. Evolution doesn't require words. The Omega Protocol. Dr. Jennifer Walker's footsteps echoed through the ancient corridors of the Galactic archives. The massive repository of knowledge stretched for miles beneath the surface of Centaurus Prime, its quantum crystals holding the collected wisdom of 1,000 civilizations. She touched the cool surface of a memory crystal, watching as holographic scripts floated around her. After 3 weeks of searching, she'd found something extraordinary. Records of civilizations that had achieved what humans apparently sought. Most fascinating, Doctor, her research assistant, a crystalline entity named Ix, chimed. These records suggest 17 prior instances of species achieving transcendence through silence. Jennifer traced the ancient symbols with her finger. Not just silence, Ix. Look at the pattern. Each civilization reached a point where communication itself became obsolete. She pulled up another holographic record, this one dating back nearly a million years. They didn't stop talking because they had nothing to say. They stopped because they'd evolved beyond the need for words. The archives around them hummed with energy as more records surfaced, drawn by their queries. Stories of civilizations that had seeded their galaxies with transformation engines disguised as normal technology. Species that had discovered the underlying quantum nature of consciousness itself. Dr. Ix's crystalline form vibrated with excitement. The energy readings from abandoned human settlements, they matched these historical patterns exactly. Jennifer nodded, her heart racing. She'd suspected as much when she'd first detected the quantum fluctuations around Earth's former colonies. The terraforming equipment, the atmospheric processors, even the entertainment systems, they were all part of something bigger. A notification pulsed on her wrist computer. New readings from the Perseus arm showed massive energy spikes around former human installations. She pulled up the live feed, watching in amazement as reality itself seemed to ripple. They didn't just plan this, she whispered. They prepared the entire galaxy for it. Every piece of technology they shared, every system they installed. She paused, remembering something her brother, Michael, had told her about his investigation in the intelligence division. It was all connected. Ix floated closer to the holographic display. But why leave clues? If they achieve such advancement, why not simply vanish? Jennifer smiled, touching another memory crystal. Because that's not how humans work. We've never been able to keep discoveries to ourselves. Even now, at the height of our evolution, we're leaving breadcrumbs. The archives suddenly dimmed, power fluctuating as something activated deep within the facility. Ancient records began connecting themselves, forming patterns that hadn't been visible before. Jennifer watched in awe as humanity's true legacy revealed itself. The Omega Protocol. She read from a newly formed holographic display. It wasn't just about human transcendence. They created a pathway for others to follow. Ix's crystalline structure pulsed with understanding. The quantum entanglement nodes disguised as terraforming equipment were never meant to transform planets. Jennifer finished. They were meant to transform consciousness itself. She accessed another set of records, this one detailing the subtle changes occurring in spaces humans had abandoned. Reality isn't breaking down around their former settlements. It's evolving. A soft chime echoed through the archives as a new message appeared, encoded in her family's private cipher. The sender, her father, Thomas Walker, former director of Galactic Intelligence. Jenny, by now you've found the records. You always were the clever one. What you've discovered isn't just humanity's path. It's a universal journey. The silence isn't an end. It's an invitation. The galaxy fears our quiet because they don't understand it yet. Help them see what you've seen. Show them what the silence really means. Love, Dad. Jennifer stood in the dimming light of the archives, watching as ancient knowledge merged with present transformation. Humanity hadn't abandoned the galaxy. They'd given it the greatest gift possible, the chance to evolve beyond itself. Come on, "Ix," she said, gathering her research materials. "We need to show the Council what we found. They need to understand that humanity's silence isn't a threat." She smiled, watching as another quantum ripple cascaded through reality. It's the first note of a symphony they can't hear yet. Sleeping giants. Admiral David Thompson watched from the observation deck of the Peacekeeping Force Command Station as another human factory complex began its metamorphosis. The massive industrial facility, once dedicated to producing standard terraforming equipment, now pulsed with ethereal energy as its very structure rewrote itself. Fascinating, isn't it? Dr. Eleanor Reed, his last remaining human scientist, stood beside him. Her form had already begun to shimmer at the edges. "We built them to sleep until the right moment. Now they're finally waking up." "Why show me this, Eleanor?" David's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, his Proximan heritage evident in his careful observation of the transformation below. "You'll be gone soon, like the others." She smiled that same knowing smile he'd seen on every human face lately. "Because you've always understood us better than most, Admiral. You knew we weren't just building factories and outposts. We were writing a story into the fabric of space-time itself." The factory's outer shell dissolved, revealing layers of impossible geometry beneath. What had once been assembly lines and processing units now formed patterns that hurt to look at directly. David's enhanced vision could barely track the changes as they cascaded through the structure. All those years, he mused, watching humans spread their technology across the galaxy. "We thought you were being generous, sharing your innovations." He turned to Eleanor, whose outline grew more indistinct by the minute. "But every piece of technology was connected, wasn't it?" "Connected, but not in the way you think." Eleanor gestured to the transforming facility. "We didn't build a network to control or dominate. We built a ladder, rung by rung, showing the way to something greater." Emergency alerts flashed across the command station's displays. Similar transformations were occurring at every human industrial site across known space. Automated systems that had continued running after humanity's withdrawal now shifted into their true forms. "The Council is panicking," David noted, watching the diplomatic channels flood with frightened messages. "They think this is some kind of weapon system activating." Eleanor laughed softly. "Typical. When faced with transcendence, they look for threats." Her hand, now almost transparent, pointed to a new pattern emerging in the facility below. "What you're seeing isn't destruction, Admiral. It's evolution." The factory had become something else entirely, a structure that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Energy patterns rippled outward, touching and transforming nearby systems that humans had built over the decades. "Our greatest gift," Eleanor continued, her voice beginning to echo strangely, "wasn't the technology itself. It was the potential we wove into everything we created. Every system, every device, every piece of human engineering contained the seeds of its own transcendence." David watched as the transformation spread, following pathways laid down through years of human expansion. "You turned the entire galaxy into an incubator for evolution." "More than that," Eleanor smiled, her form now barely visible. "We turned it into a classroom. Everything that's happening now, it's all just the first lesson." A final alert flashed across the command station screens. The transformed facility had begun broadcasting on all frequencies, not with words or data, but with something else. Patterns of pure potential that rewrote the very rules of reality around them. "The others will come soon," Eleanor said, her voice now seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. "Those who choose to follow where we've led. Watch for them, Admiral. Help them understand what they're seeing." "And what exactly are they seeing?" David asked, even as Eleanor's form began to fade completely. Her last words echoed through the chamber. "They're seeing what happens when a species decides that evolving isn't enough, when they choose to become evolution itself." As Eleanor vanished, David stood alone, watching the cascade of transformations spread across the galaxy. The humans hadn't just built their technology into the fabric of civilization. They'd written the next chapter of cosmic evolution into every circuit, every component, every system they'd ever shared. The sleeping giants were awake now, and their dance of transformation was just beginning. In the silence of their departure, humanity had left behind not just tools or weapons, but doorways to a new kind of existence, one that beckoned to any species brave enough to step through. The vanishing. The Krell warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their crystalline hulls gleaming in Earth's sunlight. High Commander Vexthor stood on the bridge of his flagship, Eternal Victory, mandibles clicking in anticipation. After centuries of watching humans spread across the galaxy like a virus, the Krell Empire would finally demonstrate the futility of such rapid expansion. "My lord," his tactical officer reported, "we're detecting no defensive measures. Earth appears completely unprotected." Vexthor's compound eyes narrowed. The humans had dismantled their defense grid weeks ago, but surely they hadn't left their homeworld truly vulnerable. "Begin the approach. Prepare main batteries." Captain Rebecca Martinez watched the Krell fleet advance from her cloaked observation post near Luna. She was humanity's last active operative, chosen to witness what would come next. Her quantum communicator pulsed once, indicating that everything was proceeding exactly as calculated. "Such predictable creatures," she murmured, remembering the simulations that had projected this very scenario. Always assuming that silence means weakness. The Krell fleet moved into attack formation, their weapons charging. High Commander Vexthor raised his primary claw, preparing to give the order that would demonstrate his empire's supremacy. He never got the chance. Reality shifted. There was no explosion, no dramatic flash of weapons fire. The space around Earth simply rewrote itself. The Krell fleet, along with their entire empire across the galaxy, phased out of normal spacetime. Vexthor found himself and his crew in somewhere else, a space between spaces, where the laws of physics were more like polite suggestions. His ship's sensors, designed to detect any known form of energy or matter, reported nothing but impossibilities. A holographic image appeared on his bridge. Captain Rebecca Martinez, her form both there and not there simultaneously. "Welcome, High Commander, to what comes next." "What? What have you done?" Vexthor's mandibles clattered in distress. "We haven't done anything to you," Rebecca replied calmly. "We simply showed you what you weren't ready to see. Your entire empire now exists in a state of quantum superposition. You're everywhere and nowhere until you make a choice." Across the transformed space that had once been Krell territory, similar scenes played out. Every citizen of their empire found themselves suspended between states of reality, confronted with a simple truth. Humanity hadn't developed weapons because they'd evolved beyond the concept of warfare itself. "Your species will be given a choice," Rebecca continued, her image flickering between states of existence. "You can return to normal spacetime, unchanged but understanding the futility of aggression against what you cannot comprehend. Or, Vexthor whispered, "or you can choose to follow us, to evolve beyond the limitations of your current existence, to understand why we went quiet." The hologram expanded, showing Vexthor visions of what humanity had become. His compound eyes struggled to process the images of beings that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, of consciousness freed from the constraints of singular reality. "The silence," Rebecca explained, "wasn't our surrender. It was our metamorphosis, and now it's your opportunity." Throughout the suspended empire, Krell citizens made their choices. Most chose to return to normal spacetime, humbled by the experience. But some, including a young scientist named Zexkar, chose to follow humanity's path. Vexthor watched as portions of his empire simply ceased to exist in any conventional sense, their consciousness transforming into something his sensors couldn't detect. The remaining Krell found themselves back in normal space, their mighty empire reduced not by violence, but by choice. Rebecca's image began to fade. "Remember this moment, High Commander. Remember that when humanity went quiet, it wasn't because we had nothing left to say. It was because we have found something better than words." As the last human operative vanished from normal spacetime, she left behind a message that would echo through the generations of species that witnessed the Krell's transformation. Silence isn't the end of communication. Sometimes it's the beginning of understanding. The Krell Empire's attempted conquest became a cautionary tale, not of military defeat, but of the moment they learned that true power lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the choice to transcend destruction itself. The choice. Tommy Wilson appeared simultaneously in every seat of power across the galaxy. A small human boy of perhaps 10 years old, dressed in simple clothes, his presence both impossible and undeniable. In the Galactic Council chamber, in the war rooms of militant species, in the meditation chambers of ancient races, he materialized with a smile that held the weight of transformation. "Hello," he said, his voice echoing across thousands of light years. "I'm here to offer you a choice." In the Central Science Academy of the Skiteri Collective, young researcher Vixna watched in fascination as the human child appeared before their most advanced quantum computing array. Her scales shifted color with excitement as her instruments registered impossible readings from his presence. "What you're measuring isn't me," Tommy said, answering her unspoken question. "It's the space between what you can perceive and what actually exists." Across the galaxy, different species reacted to his appearance in characteristic ways. The warrior races reached for weapons that passed harmlessly through him. The scientific minds attempted scans that returned contradictory results. The philosophical orders meditated on his presence, sensing something far deeper than a mere projection. Humanity discovered something, Tommy continued, his words reaching all audiences simultaneously. But it wasn't technology or energy, or even consciousness as you understand it. We discovered that evolution itself can evolve. Vixna's instruments began displaying patterns that matched the quantum signatures left behind by human technology. "The transformations we've been observing," she whispered, "they're not just changes in physical structure. They're changes in the fundamental nature of existence." Tommy completed her thought, smiling. "Every piece of technology we shared, every system we built, every interaction we had, they were all lessons, teaching the universe itself how to transcend its own rules." In the Galactic Council chamber, Ambassador Ravak watched as the human child's form shifted through multiple states of reality simultaneously. "Why appear as a child?" he asked. "Because children understand something adults often forget," Tommy replied, his form flickering like quantum possibilities. "Everything has to grow up, even reality itself. And growth requires choice." The message that followed was broadcast not in words or images, but in pure potential. Every sentient being in the galaxy saw visions of what humanity had become, beings of pure consciousness, existing in a state of constant evolution, their understanding of reality expanding beyond the limitations of physical form. "You can join us," Tommy offered. "Not as servants or students, but as fellow travelers. The path we found isn't just for humans. It's for anyone ready to take the next step in cosmic evolution." Vixna's scientific instruments overloaded as they tried to measure the possibilities emanating from the child's presence. But she had stopped watching her screens, understanding finally that some things couldn't be measured. They could only be experienced. "How?" she asked, her scales shimmering with colors that hadn't existed moments before. Tommy's smile widened, the same way humanity did. "By understanding that consciousness isn't limited to thinking, that evolution isn't limited to biology, and that existence isn't limited to a single state of being." Across the galaxy, different beings began to make their choices. Some, like Vixna, stepped forward immediately, their forms beginning to shimmer as they embraced the transformation. Others chose to remain as they were, watching and waiting. "There's no wrong choice," Tommy assured them all. "Every path is valid. But for those who choose to follow us, remember, what you're leaving behind isn't your existence. It's just one way of existing." As beings across the galaxy made their decisions, reality itself seemed to hold its breath. The silence that humanity had initiated wasn't an ending. It was an invitation to begin something new. Tommy's form began to fade, but his presence left an indelible mark on the consciousness of every being that witnessed him. His final words echoed not through space, but through the quantum fabric of existence itself. The universe isn't just stranger than you imagine. It's stranger than you can imagine, until you choose to evolve beyond imagination itself. In the wake of his departure, the galaxy faced its most profound moment of choice, not between life and death, but between one form of existence and another. The silence that humanity had begun was about to become a chorus of transformation. Beyond the veil, Dr. Alexander Wright stood at the threshold between realities, his form shifting between states of existence as he guided another group of beings through their transformation. Before him, a collection of species from across the galaxy prepared to take their final step into transcendence. "What you're about to experience," he explained, his voice resonating on multiple planes of reality simultaneously, "isn't an ending. It's an infinite beginning." Among the group, a young Skiteri scientist named Vixna trembled with anticipation, her scales reflecting colors that shouldn't exist in normal spacetime. Beside her, representatives from 12 other species waited, each having chosen to follow humanity's path. "The silence you heard from Earth," Alex continued, "was really the sound of an entire species learning to speak in the language of reality itself." He gestured to the space around them, where patterns of pure possibility danced like aurora borealis. "What you're seeing now are just the first words." Through the quantum veil that separated conventional space from what lay beyond, they could see glimpses of what humanity had become. Beams of pure consciousness moved through multiple dimensions, their thoughts reshaping reality itself. They existed in a state of constant evolution, each moment bringing new understanding, new potential, new ways of being. "Watch closely," Alex instructed as the veil thinned. "See how they're not just changing. They're becoming change itself." The assembled beings witnessed human consciousness freed from physical constraints, moving through time and space like fish through water. They saw how humanity had transformed not just themselves, but the very concept of transformation. "Remember," Alex said, his form synchronizing with the quantum fluctuations around them, "evolution isn't a ladder to climb. It's a dance to join." Vixna stepped forward first, her scientific curiosity overwhelming any lingering doubts. As she crossed the threshold, her physical form began to dissolve, not into nothingness, but into everythingness. Her consciousness expanded, touching minds across dimensions, understanding reality from angles that her former self couldn't have comprehended. One by one, the others followed. A meridian philosopher merged with the quantum foam of spacetime, their crystalline thoughts refracting through multiple realities. A Proximan warrior transcended beyond conflict, understanding at last that true power lay in the ability to evolve beyond the need for power itself. Through it all, Alex guided them, showing them how to maintain their individual awareness while becoming part of something far greater. "This is what humanity discovered," he explained as the last of the group made their transition. "Not just a new state of being, but an entirely new way of becoming." Beyond the veil, they joined the symphony of transformed consciousness that humanity had begun. They saw how each transformed being added their own unique perspective to the collective evolution of reality itself. The silence that had terrified the galaxy was revealed as the space between notes in an infinite song of becoming. Former Admiral David Thompson, now a being of pure quantum potential, greeted the newcomers. "Welcome." His thoughts resonated across multiple planes of existence. "To what comes after evolution?" Together, they witnessed the next phase of cosmic development unfolding. Reality itself was learning, growing, becoming more than the sum of its parts. The transformed humans hadn't just changed themselves, they'd initiated a metamorphosis of existence itself. "This is why we went quiet," Alex shared, his consciousness interweaving with the new arrivals. "Not because we had nothing left to say, but because we found a better way to speak, through transformation itself." As the new beings adjusted to their transcendent state, they began to understand what humanity had known all along: that consciousness, evolution, and reality were not separate things, but different aspects of the same infinite dance. The galaxy had feared the silence, never realizing it was really the intake of breath before a universal song. Now, as more beings chose to follow humanity's path, that song grew richer, deeper, more complex with each new voice that joined the chorus. In the space between conventional existence and what lay beyond, Dr. Alexander Wright continued his work, guiding others toward transcendence. The silence that had once terrified the galaxy had become an invitation to join the greatest adventure in cosmic history, the evolution of evolution itself. And in the quantum depths of transformed space-time, reality smiled, understanding at last what humanity had known all along. The most profound transformations always begin with silence.